Today, I'd like to continue our journey in the Buddhist and Christian perspective on joy. How do we find joy, particularly among some of the challenges in life, some of the difficulties we find in life? For many people, we look at the Christian perspective, and in terms of the Hebrew scriptures, we look at the different prophets that have risen up to really challenge us and to draw us back into a deeper relationship with God. One of the most amazing of those prophets was the prophet Jeremiah. Uh, and one of the things that many commentators feel about the prophet Jeremiah is his honesty. Jeremiah told God right out, I don't want to be a prophet. Here comes God, and God wants to call him, and God says, I'll help you. And Jeremiah says, no, this is not for me. And I think many of us can relate to that sense of honesty. God calls us to confront sometimes very difficult situations that involve a lot of suffering, a lot of despair. Uh, and we're like, well, wait a minute. Am I the one to help in that situation? Maybe there's somebody else. And God says, no, you are the one. You can do it. I will be with you. And I think that's the thing that we have to realize is that we are not in this alone. And there is our relationship with God. There is the strength that comes from God. And there's also the strength of community. So when we have those Jeremiah moments, we say, no, God, let us reflect on that strength that God gives to us. Desmond Tutu, the bishop, recalls a difficult moment in his life. One of those who was fighting against apartheid in South Africa, a very courageous prophet, I guess similar to Jeremiah in the sense, Chris Hani. Chris was assassinated. And of course, there are extremists on all sides of the issue who will do things like that, will take the law into their own hands and assassinate people, eliminate people who they think are their enemies. And that comes, of course, from a place of great hatred, where you're so opposed to what that person is saying or standing for. And in this case, it was equal rights for the black citizens of South Africa. You're so against that. You've been against that for so long. You've been taught that you're moved to assassination. Desmond was very close to Chris, admired him. And when he heard that he was assassinated, he was so upset. And he says, quite honestly, I cried like a baby when I heard that news. The depth of emotion that he felt. This horrible experience. Losing someone you treasure so much, someone who is standing for the good, standing for justice, standing for what is right. And that person is brutally assassinated. It's a devastating experience. And I think we can all relate to it. We've experienced different assassinations of people that we admired, presidents, those running to be president, civil rights leaders. Very, very difficult experience. But then Tutu relates that to another experience that he had. That certainly was an experience of despair, of difficulty. But he remembers working with a family whose daughter had been brutally killed. And it was such a hard experience for them. Again, she was black and she was just really brutally killed. An awful situation. But the family was an unusually strong family of faith. And so they brought their faith to the experience. And they supported giving amnesty to those who killed their daughter. They didn't want this cycle of violence to continue. And they said violence isn't the way. We have to take this in a different direction. And so they said, don't punish these people. They were misled. They were wrong. They've confessed they're wrong. They know they were wrong. They know that what they did was misplaced. Let's offer them forgiveness. But this amazing family went even a step further. They opened a nonprofit to help people in the township where their daughter had been killed. So they said, yes, she's been killed. What can we do to really help her memory stay alive and what she stood for and the values that were so important to her? And so they opened this nonprofit in the township, and it was the very place where their daughter had been killed. So they said, we have to do something here. We have to turn this around. We have to give people hope. We have to give people new life, new opportunities. And so they opened a nonprofit as a sign of their commitment. But then they took it even a step further. They employed those men in the nonprofit who had killed their daughter. Imagine that. They said these men were wrong. What they did was terrible, horrible. But they've admitted they're wrong. They need another life. They need to rebuild their life. And so they employed those very men. A true story, an amazing story. You think, well, how could something like that happen? But I think the point is there are people who are willing to confront suffering. Like the prophet Jeremiah had to confront all sorts of difficulties, and he didn't want to be a prophet. And we're put in situations like this family was put in, like Bishop Tutu was put in with his friend, where something terrible happens. How are we going to react? What are we going to do? How are we going to change that reality? How are we going to bring forgiveness and healing to that situation? An insight that that family brought was that, people are fundamentally good. People want to strive to make the world better. People want to build up families and relationship. People want to bring joy and love to other people in friendship and in mutuality. And so people like the prophet Jeremiah, people like Bishop Tutu and his friend Chris, and people like this wonderful family, they did extraordinary acts of love. And that's what it takes to build a world of joy.